Today's video is brought to you by Audible. Perhaps the most common question I get asked here on this channel is where I find my topics for my videos. And while I've stumbled across a good amount of stuff online, by far the most consistent way that I've been able to digest complicated and interesting cases has been through audiobooks. I listened to Final Destination Disaster in regards to Flight 980, I listened to the Book of Satoshi and referenced it a lot from my Satoshi series, and finally in regards to my Silk Road video, I highly recommend a book by the name of American Kingpin by Nick Bolton. There are just certain topics that are best enjoyed when you can actually sit down and dedicate time to the intricacies of a story, and for someone like myself who finds it very hard to just sit down and actually read a book, I highly recommend Audible. Audible has by far one of the best selections for audiobooks to keep you entertained for hours, as the Audible Plus catalog includes thousands of audiobooks, exclusive Audible originals, and podcasts on a variety of subjects. And finding a good rabbit hole to go down is as simple as going to the mystery or true crime section. With all of that being said, try Audible absolutely free for 30 days by going to audible.com/sociable or texting sociable to 500-500. Once again, that's audible.com/sociable or text sociable to 500-500. And thanks once again to Audible for making this video possible. In the world of cryptocurrencies, if there's something I've learned, it's that no company, no matter how legitimate they may seem, is above turning into a completely full-blown Ponzi scheme or scam. Due to the gray area of the industry and varied methods of skirting regulation, it's honestly no wonder you have a new form of criminal activity from that space popping up daily. But that being said, the mystery we are going to be exploring today is by far one of the least talked about, yet one of the most insane stories from the industry. And I must say, you know you're in for a treat when you have even the crypto promoters, who rarely say anything negative, say something like this.
When most of my no-coiner friends ask me what is one of the most egregious frauds I know about, I usually say fractional reserve banking. However, I often sense that this is not the answer that they're looking for. But Guy, you deal with crypto all the time. Tell me about some crypto crime. With a slight frustration, I tell them to Google Quadriga CX.
With that being said, today let's dive into the mysterious death of Gerald Cotten and the bizarre circumstances surrounding Canada's largest cryptocurrency exchange, Quadriga Fintech Solutions.
Canada's largest cryptocurrency exchange is in hot water, and thousands of clients have millions of dollars in frozen assets with little information.
One of Canada's best-known cryptocurrency exchanges says it does not have access to $190 million worth of customer funds and is seeking creditor protection. Parent company of the BC-based Quadriga CX says it lost access to the cryptocurrency after the death of its 30-year-old CEO, Gerald Cotten, in December.
For everyone involved, that as it relates to Gerald Cotten and Quadriga, the guy is still alive.
$400,000 from this Quadriga CX scam. So this is a total like $550,000 gone, right?
Today we announced charges in what may be the largest international money laundering case ever brought by the United States.
The beginning of this story begins with a Canadian man by the name of Gerald Cotten, a seemingly friendly-looking and clean-cut Canadian business student who was studying business administration at the Schulich School of Business in Toronto. Cotten was regarded as charismatic, soft-spoken, and suspiciously wealthy. He was notorious for carrying large sums of cash with him wherever he went and paying for things flat out, never financed. According to an Outline.com article, the guy had more money than he knew what to do with, said Eric Schlutz, who got to know Mr. Cotten at a small flying club in Nova Scotia. I've seen Gary walk through an airport with $50K in cash. That's the scale of the money the guy had. He was a very reasonable person, but if he was going to spend the money, he was going to buy something nice. And while the majority of his lavish spending habits would occur sometime after he graduated college, it's worth noting that his jet-set lifestyle was seemingly only built in a matter of a few years. And the assets included in his fortune were included but not limited to 16 properties in Nova Scotia, a Cessna 400 plane, a $600,000 yacht, and of course a brand new Lexus. And while you'd expect some grandiose come-up story for someone who was doing so well for themselves, Getting back to our timeline, after Cotton's graduation in 2010, not much is known for certain, and there's a mysterious 3-year gap right after he graduates until his work history begins in 2013. During this undocumented and mysterious time, however, what we can say for certain, he learned about Bitcoin, he moved to Vancouver from Toronto, and the last thing is that he met his new business partner, Michael Patron. In November of 2013, Cotton appeared fresh in the workforce. Not in an entry-level job, but co-founding and front-running a cryptocurrency exchange business by the name of Quadriga as a CEO and Michael Patron as the co-founder. Now, what I want you to keep in mind is that starting a money exchange business requires a good amount of capital, and Michael Patron's work history didn't really suggest a lot of prior traditional success. We'll talk more about Patron in a bit, but just know for now, he did not fund the entire thing. Nonetheless, Quadriga CX started its operations in Vancouver, Canada at an opportune time. Bitcoin had just become a household name due to the popularity and closure of the Silk Road, and this new form of online narcotics trade had made it a scramble to see which dark web market would rise to prominence next. However, this wasn't the only reason that Quadriga was successful. The other major factor here was that the largest Bitcoin exchange prior was Mt. Gox, and during this time, they had lost about 850,000 Bitcoins belonging to their customers.
The problem with Bitcoin, you can't do anything right now.
No, you can give people their Bitcoins back if you wanted to. If you wanted to, you could give me mine back right now. You can do that. You can.
The timing here could not be more perfect, as this happened in February of 2014, and Quadriga had launched their online platform just a month prior. And after the success of their online platform, they quickly rose to capturing a total of 80% of the market share in Canada over all of the other cryptocurrency exchanges. And while on the surface the company looked to be a smooth operation, if you were to look deeper into the details regarding the company and the people surrounding it, you could see hints of something far more sinister. While on the surface, Quadriga could be seen as a successful business shaping up into its maturity, if you knew the reality of what was going on behind the scenes, it wasn't so much a business as it was Cotton just manning the entire show from his MacBook. Cotton was the sole custodian of all of the cryptocurrency funds on the exchange, and the company itself had no proper accounting software or any proper way of tracking funds or its success. And basically, anytime you tried to pry for details within this company, it would only get more and more suspicious. For instance, one of the main ways for users to withdraw money out of the exchange was to meet at a nondescript location where they could pick up cash. Furthermore, Quadriga didn't have any actual business bank accounts due to the fact that no regulated bank would be able to have a client that deals in cryptocurrency due to the posed risk for money laundering, among other regulatory issues. And instead, Quadriga had to use other methods for shifting money around, including a platform credit system, that whenever money was deposited into the exchange, you wouldn't actually hold $1 on their platform, but rather you would be credited 1 Quadriga buck, to which this could be used to trade equally on the exchange. And the reason for this is that if you were to deposit money into the exchange and then buy straight into Bitcoin, that would be a money transmitting business. And by using this Quadriga buck token that was on the platform, they would technically be selling you a token and not transmitting money. Moreover, when money was wired into Quadriga, it wasn't into Quadriga's bank accounts, but rather the money would be wired into various shell companies where the banks were unaware of what the transactions were actually intended for, aka money laundering. Here's a list of all of the payment processors they used, and 2 of these were owned by employees of Quadriga, and this shell company was owned by Gerald Cotton's wife. Now, as you can imagine, it's a lot easier to get a bank account for a cryptocurrency exchange if the bank doesn't know what you're actually doing with it. But we're really only scratching the surface with the amount of sketchy money that was involved in this company. The most notorious payment processor on that list was one by the name of Crypto Capital Corp. Crypto Capital Corp was another payment processor that basically had ties to the entire crypto industry. Crypto Capital Corp acted as an unregulated shadow bank to help move laundered funds into a variety of accounts, as well as providing wires for cryptocurrency exchanges. Various people involved in these schemes would set up companies registered in Panama, where all that it was needed to start a company there was a Panamanian citizen to sign off as a registered officer, to which the real ownership could be obscured due to the strict privacy laws there. And Crypto Capital basically set up an entire network of these types of shell companies. It's worth noting that the registered officer, or the Panamanian citizen that was on the variety of these shell companies associated with crypto capital, was a man by the name of Ivan Manuel Molina Lee. And it's also worth noting he was later arrested in 2019 in Poland for laundering about $390 million from Colombian drug cartels using the cryptocurrency exchange Bitfinex. And while we'll get back to crypto capital in a moment, let's get back to Quadriga. In 2015, the company was seeking to go public on the Canadian Stock Exchange. And Michael Patron's role in this entire ordeal was basically to help bridge those connections to get the company to go public, to which his share in Quadriga would help him make a return on his initial investment. But that was assuming that Quadriga was actually able to be successful as a company, because at the end of 2014, things were not looking good for Quadriga. And the company had actually suffered a $90,000 net loss with only $22,000 in revenue. Now, considering how poorly records were kept, it's hard to say how factual this actually was. But as it appeared to Michael Patron and other investors in the company, Quadriga was running out of money, and as a result, in February of 2015, Michael Patron would raise capital for the company by seeking out additional investors and putting an additional $150,000 into Quadriga himself and $700,000 from other investors. With another round of funding around March of 2015, Quadriga announced that it would go public through a reverse takeover of another company by the name of Whiteside Capital. However, throughout this year, Quadriga would continue to burn through all of that investor capital, leading to a breaking point in December of 2015, where overnight Gerald Cotten would fire basically everybody from the company, including their regulatory attorney. Because on one of those December nights, Gerald Cotten would sit at his laptop and decide to take the company down a lawless path. It was around this time that Cotten would log into Quadriga and create an account by the name of Chris Markey. And what I want you to keep in mind is that since he owned the back end of the website, he could credit this account with 1 million fake dollars, to which he would then go on to buy 1,700 Bitcoin with that fake money. By February of 2016, Michael Patron had decided that he wanted to cut ties with Quadriga and Cotten altogether. This was after Cotten had told him that he did not want the company to go public anymore. And a month later, the British Columbia Securities Commission had banned Quadriga from going public altogether after they had failed to submit a proper financial audit. By March of 2016, Quadriga is now a one-man show, and Gerald Cotten would continue to operate with zero oversight. And during the same time, Cotten would go on to fire his money printer up again, buying 370,000 Ethereum. And furthermore, the Bitcoin that he had bought with his fake dollars, he had then transferred on to another exchange and sold it for real money. Fast forward to 2017, and the crypto boom is in full swing. More and more customers are flocking in and wiring money into unregulated exchanges. This means that the companies like Crypto Capital Corp and their various network of bank accounts all around the world that are being used to wire funds to customers are going to start picking up more volume. This would make it only a matter of time before governments would notice and would start freezing accounts that were tied to money laundering. And around June of 2017, Cotten had decided that he wanted a bit more money. He fired up his money printer again and decided to credit his account 100 million fake Quadriga dollars, and he would continue buying up all of the cryptocurrency on his exchange. As June of 2016 would continue on, Cotten was using these funds to trade against his own customers. According to the Ontario Securities Commission, 95% of the trading activity that took place on Quadriga was done through Chris Markey, meaning that when you logged onto Quadriga, you were quite literally trading against someone with an unlimited credit line, and the people responsible for covering those losses were other customers on Quadriga. This essentially turns the exchange into an insolvent ticking time bomb that will explode the moment new investors stop coming in and people begin to cash out, aka a Ponzi scheme. Fast forward to December of 2017, Bitcoin has reached an all-time high of $20,000 per coin. This is all while Quadriga has continued to struggle to keep up with demands. Users on Reddit begin experiencing delays with their withdrawals. Money is getting congested, and the third-party payment processors that are fraudulently wiring money to these customers are starting to draw more attention. Throughout this time, another shell company processor by the name of Custodian just had $67 million pass through its small business banking account. Cotton had worked with a man by the name of Jose Reyes to set up these extra accounts to process more money. And around December of 2017, Reyes got a bit tempted and decided to transfer $2.3 million to his own personal checking account. This signals the Canadian bank, who just saw a massive deposit, to look into where it was coming from. On January 8, 2018, the Canadian bank freezes that account. Canadian officials begin questioning Reyes as to who is the proper owner of the remaining $23 million. Now the start of 2018. The Bitcoin price has just started to go down. More sellers mean more people cashing out. January 2018. Gerald Cotton prints another $50 million and credits his Chris Marquet account. January 17, 2018. The infamous BitConnect Ponzi scheme has just popped. Users are scrambling in a race to the bottom to get their money out of the BitConnect token. Cotton is now scrambling to fulfill redemption requests, bringing on employees to help with the congestion. If you recall those shell companies from earlier, this is when Cotton seems to become desperate, recruiting a former customer service rep for his company to open a bank account and run money through. March 2018, Canadian officials send an email to Cotton questioning the usage of the funds found in Reyes' account. Cotton never responds to the email. Meanwhile, in America, in April of 2018, a trafficking sting has just taken place on a website formerly known as Backpage. 7 individuals are charged in relation to the sting. As a result, the Backpage CEO ends up getting charged as well. Backpage's CEO pleads guilty to money laundering and conspiracy to facilitate prostitution. Backpage's CEO agrees to cooperate with the investigation, and as it turns out, Backpage was using Crypto Capital Corp as a payment processor too. As a result, the US's investigation stumbles upon a network of accounts tied to Crypto Capital via the Backpage seizures. The domino effect is in full swing, and across the world, Polish authorities have just arrested Ivan Manuel Molina Lee and seized $390 million that was being laundered for the Colombian cartel. Crypto Capital's cover has been completely blown, and the US authorities have just seized a total of $850 million across the network of bank accounts, including all the money that Quadriga had sitting in that shadow bank. Bitcoin's price is down 65%, and with Crypto Capital unable to process payments for Quadriga, Gerald Cotton can no longer keep up with deposits. It's only a matter of time before people realize he's been siphoning money off the platform. Gerald Cotton's time is running out. By mid-2018, Quadriga is acting as a direct revolving door. New customer deposits are being used to directly fund withdrawals, and there's no new money to keep the scheme going. Users on Reddit are demanding they receive their withdrawals and are being given excuses like Canada's banks are the ones responsible for the delays. Overall, Cotton has effectively stripped the platform for hundreds of millions by using unlimited amounts of fake dollars to trade against his customers. And not only that, he's also spoofed his customers' balances and sold them fake cryptocurrency as well. To visualize just how bad the situation had become, this graph was prepared by the Ontario's Securities Commission. And after a thorough forensic investigation, it's believed that around January of 2018, around $180 million was actually left on the exchange, and the outstanding liabilities were around $900 million. By 2018, Cotton knows he can't keep this up much longer, and he needs to buy time to escape his responsibility. And in March of 2018, he ended up depositing $24 million back that he had stolen. From August to December, Cotton transfers an additional $10 million that he had taken for himself, just to make it seem like a good faith effort was going into getting money back. And on October 8th, 2018, Cotton would get married to his longtime girlfriend. And just a month later, Cotton would sign a will leaving all of his belongings and all of his shares to Quadriga to his wife. 3 days after signing his will, Cotton takes him and his wife to India, to which the purpose of this trip was apparently twofold. The first 8 days were to celebrate their honeymoon, and the final 4 days are supposedly to help set up and finalize an orphanage that they'd sponsored. And on December 8th, 2018 at 5:15 p.m., Cotton and his wife would land in Hapur, India. And just after checking into a 4-night stay at their hotel by the name of Oberoi Rajvilas, Cotton would supposedly get sick and then taken to Fort Escort's private hospital. And a day later, he apparently dies from complications related to Crohn's disease, with the official cause of death being cardiac arrest. And I want to add that dying from Crohn's disease itself is very unlikely. However, there are certain complications that can occur. And despite the uncommon circumstances for his death, that's not what makes me doubt the story. Because apparently, it's fairly easy to get fully registered and signed fake death certificates in India. In a report done by the Science Channel in 2013, they videoed themselves going undercover to buy a death certificate that was fully signed by the local registry and fully authenticated. And the events that occur after Cotton's death are even more suspicious. On December 10th, the doctor of the Mahatma Gandhi Medical College refused to process an embalming certificate for Cotton, basically because a hotel representative showed up and claimed that they had a dead body back at their hotel. And she also stated that any time bodies were sent to her from Fortis Hospital, they were sent in an ambulance. And instead, Cotton's body was allegedly taken to the SMS Medical College, to which they are the ones who processed the embalming certificate and asked fewer questions. According to the Globe and Mail, the person in charge of the anatomy department there didn't even see the body, and the embalming certificate was processed by a junior staffer. And finally, a death certificate received by the Globe and Mail lists his death place as the Oberoi Rajvilas, while a later death certificate that was obtained by CoinDesk lists the place of death as Fortis Hospital. And if that wasn't enough, the name on the death certificate was even misspelled, naming him as Gerald Cottan. And I want you to keep in mind that taking a body back in a plane requires extra paperwork. For one, you need the death certificate, but we know that Gerald Cotton's wife had left on December 10th, as she checked out at the Oberoi at 3:04 p.m. And she also wrote an email to the orphanage stating that the couple could not attend because Gerald Cotton had died and she had to bring the body home. Is there anything I should be aware of when opening this bag? Anything sharp? Anything that will pop out at me? Just so I know.
Oh, just my dead husband, eh?
Your dead husband?
Yes.
Do you have any paperwork to go along with this? Oh no. And on December 14th, back in Canada, a closed casket service was held, and he was subsequently put into the ground. And perhaps the most selfish part of this whole story is the fact that the orphanage didn't even have enough money to actually finish setting up. As Cotton's donation didn't build an orphanage, it only provided enough for the materials, and that operator was forced to take on debt equivalent to 7 years of his income. And moreover, Cotton's widow didn't announce his death until over a month later. When she would finally update everyone, she would write, "Jerry cared deeply about honesty and transparency, values he lived by both his professional and personal life. He was hardworking and passionate, with an unwavering commitment to his customers, employees, and family." And that it was around this time that people stopped being able to pull their cryptocurrency out of the exchange, to which the company would list a notice that they are now pausing operations. And up until this time, people were still allowed to deposit into Quadriga, meaning that people depositing towards the end of Quadriga's existence didn't realize that they were depositing their money in to cover spoofed assets that were sold before. And on January 29th, she would take Cotton's name off the ownership of 4 properties and would take out collateral mortgages on all of them and place them in a separate trust, to which she was the sole owner, and this would protect those assets from creditors. This was all while none of the customers knew that Quadriga was insolvent, and on the 31st, the website would finally announce it's bankrupt, with their inability to pay out customers being that this was some completely unforeseeable event, and that Gerald Cotton only had enough foresight to leave $100,000 for his chihuahuas, but none for his very legitimate business.
So tell me your reaction when you found out that the CEO had died and taken the passwords with him.
I'm not sure if it's the true story. You never know.
Right, because there's some people suggesting that maybe he's not dead. Is that what you mean?
Yes, there are some theories. Of course, they're just theories. We don't know for sure. I think it sucks that a lot of people lost a lot of money. Obviously I'm not as affected as others who have lost much more, but it's still, it sucks that I thought I could trust it because it was a Canadian service based in Vancouver, and I guess that didn't work out.
The media latched onto this story just being as simple as they had a bunch of money and they just didn't have the password for it, but that just wasn't the case. We do know for a fact from the investigation that the cold wallets that were used to store cryptocurrency were emptied as far back as April of 2018, right around the time that Crypto Capital had their accounts seized. And it's worth noting that the exchange Kraken has posted a $100,000 reward towards any information that helps them find out what happened to those funds. According to the claims filed on behalf of Quadriga, 25.6 thousand Bitcoin, 11,000 Bitcoin Cash, 11,000 BSV, 35,000 Bitcoin Gold, and 430,000 Ether are missing in relation to Quadriga's cold wallets. And at the time of me making this video, the total sum of all that currency I just listed is around $1.85 billion still missing. And while you might expect this video to end here with a couple speculations from me, if you recall at the beginning of this video, I mentioned a suspicious 3-year gap in Cotton's work history. So what was Cotton doing prior to Quadriga, and how did he have all that money to fund the entire thing in the first place?
And what do you believe is the factor that brought you guys from where you started to how big you guys got?
So one of the differences between Quadriga CX and a lot of our competitors is that I come from a background where I've dealt with digital currencies in the past, so I know the challenges that Bitcoin exchanges and any sort of digital currency faces.
I think a lot of people don't understand that Bitcoin and digital currencies aren't necessarily a new concept, and often the same schemes are repeated throughout history. Some people might question, how did Cotton think to do all of this at such a young age? But in reality, he was involved with it for much longer than you'd think. For one, Michael Patron and Gerald Cotton likely met doing previous business, and Cotton's admission stating, "We have a lot of experience with digital currencies and the challenge they face," is probably one of the few truths the guy ever told. In regards to Michael Patron and Quadriga, it does appear that Gerald Cotton turned his back on Patron. But it's also worth noting that Michael Patron has changed his name. But he was formerly known as a man by the name of Omar Dahani, and he changed his name twice because he was a convicted felon that laundered money for an identity theft ring by the name of Shadow Crew. Patron got to start accepting Western Union money orders, and he would mix your money with a digital currency called eGold that once again accepted bank wires in exchange for the token. Consequently, Patron was deported from the US, and it seems that he started working on something called M-Gold Exchange with Gerald Cotton, another currency exchange that was around in 2008, and there were quite a few options for digital currencies at the time. One of the larger currencies before Bitcoin was Liberty Reserve, and the premise was simple. $1 was 1 Liberty Reserve, and you could send money to anybody else who had an account on the network for a small fee that would go to Liberty Reserve, where they would take 1% on all transactions. However, Liberty Reserve could only be traded through exchanges where they would take a fee. The main difference here between this and something like PayPal is that you didn't need any identity verification or any kind of regulation and just needed an email. And the company, which operated out of Costa Rica, grew to 1 million users by the time it was shut down. To which, when it was shut down, it was labeled as the largest money laundering case in the United States history. As you can imagine, Liberty Reserve brought forth all of your usual activity. And when the US finally seized Liberty Reserve, it resulted in a massive data dump that showed all of the accounts and their balances on the network. Going through the government exhibits, the connection to Cotton and Patron is visual within one of the millions of accounts. In the row containing mgold.com, you can see the first and last name Omar Patron and the email account gerald.cotton@gmail.com. This account contained a balance of 5 million Liberty Reserve. And Liberty Reserve shut down in 2013, and it just so happens that Cotton and Patron would found Quadriga later that year. And wait, there's more, because Cotton also had multiple accounts on Quadriga, to which his main alternate alias was Scepter, that linked to an extensive scamming history, including a forum dedicated to Ponzi schemes by the name of Talk Gold, to which Patron was friends with a user by the name of Scepter. And Scepter joined Talk Gold in 2003, meaning that he was likely in his teens when he started doing this. His past scams included a Ponzi investment program by the name of Lucky Invest and SNS Investments, which can all be found on the closed/scam section of Talk Gold. And these services claim to offer 103% returns in 48 hours. And it appears that Cotton's history also included shilling services. Basically, you would pay him money and he would go on a bunch of sock puppet accounts and make your investment scheme seem legit. This all ties into a Blackout forum account by the name of Murdoch1337, where he made a post stating in 2012 that he was looking for a programmer who was familiar with Bitcoin to develop a website that was very similar to Bitstamp. And you could find ads on another website where he left his Skype name for the exact same purpose. The Skype name was Jerry WC, or scepter@countermail.com. Murdoch1337 is Gerald Cotton, and it just so happens that his Black Hat World account was active August 2019, long after your boy was in the ground. So either this was some investigation looking into this account, which I doubt, or Mr. Cotton didn't actually pass away. If so, where is he right now? I'd love to know what you guys think, because there are quite a few people that are looking for him, especially if it means redeeming the $100,000 for the details of the funds. I guess only time will tell if Gerald Cotton will come back from the dead. This is Barely Sociable. Have a good night.